check, and yep, that seems to be working. All right, hello my friends. Hello and welcome to another episode of Talk Power BI. Today we have another special one. I'm just gonna make sure the audio is working. So hey, by the way, if you're joining us live, then let me know in the comments if the audio is working well. If you can hear me, if you can hear the guests. Thomas, Bruce, Diego, why don't you just say hello so they have
Hi guys.
audio at least? Awesome, great. So folks,
Hello.
all right, great. So yeah, let us know that you can hear both parties. And today's episode, we are doing real Power BI project presentations. We had 4 phenomenal presentations last week, and we have 3 more this week. And we have a food production company using Power BI. We have a healthcare company using Power BI, and we have an educational institution using Power BI. And of course, Power BI, I feel is pretty universal because I don't think there's a business out there which doesn't use data. Or let's put it this way, who should be using data. Often, a lot of them are not flying by the seat of the pants, but of course, things are about to change, my friends, thanks to these Power BI leaders, these Power BI pioneers, which I'm, feel really lucky to have an opportunity to hang out with. All right, so let me pop over in the chat and see what's going on. DTLA says hello from Que pasa from South Florida. Hola, my friend. Miguel says hola as well. Okay, attribution modeling. I'm not sure. Hague, Netherlands. Ben Bol is here. Audio looks good. I can't hear you. All right, so give you a little bit of background of what you're about to witness today. Is we run this project. We call it Real Power BI, where we invite business users to submit their projects, which are Pro Plus members. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Work for free, and so Pro Plus members are those who are who are on this journey to become successful Power BI consultants. And what I talk about that is is really it takes a few different things, and you would hear that in their stories. And so that's the Real Power BI project, right? So if you go to my website under free resources, you can find more about Real Power BI. And if you go under training, you can find more about our Pro Plus program, which, by the way, is also opening in January 2020. So look forward to that. So our first presenter today is Diego. And I'll share one quick bit about Diego, which I find really inspiring. So Diego, one day, he shared with me kind of his vision. And it was so funny because he shared it so casually as if it was no big deal, but it just blew me away. And Diego talked about this injustice, this thing that's unfair in our world, in our society, which is that there is a lot of knowledge out there. So there are a lot of Spanish-speaking people in the world, right? So, but there's such disparity in the information available in English versus Spanish. And Diego's mission, this humble mission, is to bring that to order, bring that more in balance. So he, by the way, is also a successful trainer, and he runs online courses which have thousands of students in them. So he's already impacting lives, and of course, he does it in Spanish. So Diego, yeah, man. I mean, I had to share that, but go ahead. Hold on, I'm gonna fix the video here. All right, so Diego, go ahead. Maybe introduce yourself as well. Tell us about your company, about what you do, and then step us through your Real Power BI project.
All right, thanks, Avi. Well, yeah, thanks for the introduction, Avi. My name's Diego Lopez. I'm from Mexico. So my native language is Spanish, but I was, and continuing with what Avi just said, I have the privilege to learn English when I was a little kid. So I'm able to access to this knowledge, right? The knowledge that is in English all over the internet, right? And but there's a huge difference between English content in the internet and Spanish content. So yeah, that's correct what Avi was saying. I'm trying to take knowledge from English, that content that is in English, and take it to Spanish. and I'm looking for people that can help. I cannot do that. Right now, I'm focusing on what I do know how to do. It's use Power BI's business intelligence and other tools, and everything related in the data analytics and data science space. But yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Thanks for the introduction. And I don't know if we should continue, Avi, with the project.
Yeah, go ahead. And I'll
Okay.
mention. So Diego, you can say its Spanish name. Gosh, I should know it, but I know it translates to automate your work.
Yeah, yeah. Right now, my webpage and
Hmm.
brand is automatizamitrabajo.com. That will translate like automate my job.
Yeah.
And it's really focused on what Power BI is really good at and other tools, as I was mentioning. And it's like to automate the repetitive work that a lot of people are doing right now in offices, in corporate jobs. And I was one that also did this type of job. So I'm trying to automate that type of
Oh,
work that people can focus on
oh,
well
that's yeah.
on things more value added, right?
Oh, that's beautiful, mate. Yeah, my coach has a saying: "We teach what we needed to learn." So yeah, all right, mate. Yeah, so go ahead. Go ahead with the presentation, and yeah, you can share your screen whenever you're ready.
Oh, I'm not changing screen.
No, not yet. I think I'd taken
Oh,
taken
sorry.
over briefly
Oh, yeah.
when we
Just a
started the channel.
moment.
Yeah.
Just a moment. I thought you were seeing here. Hmm. Here it is. Can you see it?
Yep, I can. Yeah, and I'm gonna try to move this on the side. All right, perfect. Go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Abby. Well, here I'm in Power BI. I mean, it's a good tool to present. So I made my presentation here in Power BI. So if you have any questions, Avi, or someone else, we can go to the data model and we can also go to the data view.
All right.
And it's going to, well, it has several slides. Yes, we were in PowerPoint.
Yeah. By the way, before you go ahead, so guys, I did want to call out that you're probably noticing Diego has this cool green screen behind him, which is because Diego, quite like me, has the love of video. We both love that format, so he records a lot of video tutorials, and of course, he used the green screen for that. So yeah, that's a
Yeah,
cool green screen. All right, terrific. Yeah, keep going.
thanks, Avi. Yeah, so let's start with this. This is my real Power BI project from learnpowerbi.com from Avi, right? From Avi's program. And well, Avi already talked about it a little bit, and it's where businesses submit their projects, and then these projects or some of these projects are selected, and then some of us select one of those projects, right? So I select a company to work with that they're an American company, but right now they are expanding. So they have this plant in Panama where they are producing for Central and South America, right, in the Caribbean. And well, we will talk more about the company later on. But well, this is like the big picture of how the project was taken, and it's first there was an initial contact between Avi's team and me and the business user, the one that submitted the project. His name is Oscar Zapata. And then we had our first meeting where I needed to learn about the company and understand the project, right? Then we defined the workflow in like during the meeting, we defined the workflow, we will be how will we be working, like once each week, are we going to be meeting or something like that. Then during the workflow, I develop a minimum viable product, the MVP. And then I showed this MVP, that is what we are going to see right now. And we were iterating, right, during with this idea that we had, and to really adapt it to what the business needs were. And well, take it from there, right? You can like continue working on the same dashboard, on the same report, or do something else, right? So this is like the big picture of the project. And well, let's see a little bit of the background of the company. They sell raw materials for the food and beverage industry. They are located in Panama. Like this plant is located in Panama, so where they can send product to South America, Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean, right? they also have their operations in the United States, but that's a different, that's out of the scope. So this company has in Panama, they serve between 20 and 30 customers. Each one serves in 30 to 50 items. So it's a company that's selling to other companies, right? It's a business to business company. And these companies were, that they sell to them, they use the raw materials to produce the, to use it in their own products, right? So the project was this one. And this is where my message starts for this for this project, right? As you can see, when I first had my first meeting with Oscar, he already had a lot developed in his project, in his Power BI project. These were all of the reports that he already had for this project. So he has been working on this for quite a bit now, and he also like already knew how to create a good data model, right? As you can see, we have a star schema in here with some snowflake in here, and but he has a star schema with 4 fact tables. So that's something that's like a really good practice. So that's how you can know if you are speaking with someone that they do understand how to work in the best way here in Power BI, right? Mm, and this is something that I learned actually from Avi. First, look at the data model, and you are going to see what's going on, right? So
Yeah.
we can see actually the data model, it's in here, but here we have just an image. And you can see all of the dimension tables, right? And then this is one of the reports. This is only just one of the reports. That's, I think it was the sales versus budget, one of these ones, right? So as you can see, it has like the title, it has several graphs, a table, it has interesting numbers at the top. So he was following good practices, right? So I was like, because when I selected the project, it wasn't like I knew everything that you're seeing right here, right? I just knew what the company was and what they were trying to do, but I didn't knew how advanced they were,
Yeah.
right? So when I saw this, to be honest, I was like, I don't know how much I can add to
Yeah.
this project because it's already developed and it's already it has good practices in it. So that was like my feeling, right? Like I didn't knew if what I was going to be able to add to this project, right? Avi, were you going to say something?
No, no, but it certainly rings a bell. Greg Baird talked about that, and hey, I've stepped into a lot of situations quite like that. So yeah, good stuff. Thanks for sharing
Yes.
that.
Yeah, thanks. So the problem with this, okay, so he was the background of the project. He is the background of the project, but the problem is that Oscar was trying to decide, because he was in charge of this, decide which projects to leave in the budget for next year, right? For the 2020 year. But he wasn't the only one that could decide. He needed to speak about it, about this with the owner or the director of the company. So that he has problems, like he was using Power BI to visualize the information, but then he was going to Excel to make adjustments in what was going to be considered during for the budget of 2020. And then he saved the document, and then he returned to Power BI, and he updated the graphs. So imagine doing that for every project and every SKU that that was being analyzed during the budget meeting, right? The budget definition meeting. So that was his concern, that he was going to be switching between Excel and Power BI like during the meeting, and maybe it wasn't going to look as good as having everything on one screen, right? So that was the problem that he shared. And why is an over optimistic budget like kind of a concern? Well,
Mm.
there are several things, but the two of the ones that we spoke about is that there was a low return over investment, because there were investments that were being made in the business, like increasing capacity and more fleets, more salespeople. So, but the investments were not returning didn't have a good return because the sales were not um, keeping up with the investments, right? And also, well, if you put an objective really high for for the salespeople, well, motivation can be lost, right? Because they're not going to be able to get there,
Mm-hmm.
mm, even though they give everything about themselves, right? And so the problem I was speaking is how can we decide which projects to leave in the budget? Okay, so the action, and this is after the meeting and when we already started working on the project and how I was going to make an MVP for the project for the problem. And I was thinking about what Power BI is really good at, right? Power BI, well, it's really good for several things, including the ETL process that was already being taken off because of the knowledge that Oscar had about Power BI. Also, the data modeling because it's already being taken care of with star schema. And but then Power BI is also really good at interactivity between graphs, between tables, between diagrams, slicers, and everything. And also, it's really good for the graphical analysis, right? To having different graphs to show the information in different ways so that you can understand better what's going on. So what I was thinking is how can we use this that Power BI is really good at and and use it for this problem. And also, I wanted to have the big picture in screen, as you will see right now, be able to compare different scenarios in a graph. That's like on one screen. Okay? So what we work on, and this is already worked with Oscar, and it was like I had the MVP, right? But then he started saying that, okay, so you can add this, and we can remove that, and we can have this in this place and like that. Like it was like an
Mm-hmm.
interaction, and we were working together, even though that I'm in Mexico and he was in Panama. Like it was really easy here in Power BI. I mean, it has its challenges. I don't want to say that not, but once you get it,
Yeah.
like how to work like in different places, um, different geographic places, it's easier to work on this, right? So this is like what we worked, and let me explain what's going on in here. So here we have the optimistic scenario. It's the one that is in the top part of this, and this is what I'm saying about the big picture of the budget, because this is the picture of how it is right now. And just as a note, all of this information is random, and also the projects and the SKUs is it's something that doesn't have anything to do with the real information that we were working on. So there's no problem in me showing this. And as you can see, well, for 2018, this is the budget and this is the sales. Well, sales were up, but then we have a switch in here, right? And the here you can see like sales went down, but I mean it's not like that. Right now we're only seeing like half of the information, and it was like it is random information, so it actually isn't like that. But you can see like there's a difference between the budget and the sales, right? And then we have the budget for 2020 where we don't have sales. So in here we can see what the optimistic budget looks like, and in here in this table we can see like I on a good sorry for that on a great level of detail what these graphs are composed by, right? Can you hear me, Avi?
Yeah. Oh wait. Yes, yes. I was just on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because I had like some issues in here. Okay, so the interesting part is in here, in the bottom part, right? Because in here we have the same graphs, but for the conservative scenario. We have the opportunity project. That is like the project that they were going to be working on during the next year. And if we start moving in here, if we start making clicking here, you are going to start seeing that just the information in this scenario is being modified, right? So we start removing projects if that's what you want to do.
Oh my
But you
god. Oh my god, Diego. So this is awesome. Sorry, man, to cut in, but guys, this is awesome. So of course, as a business owner, I know that when you step into this world, you realize that opportunities are always there. Opportunities are limitless, And that is not the challenge, right? I mean, you almost come up with like an idea every day or an idea every week of, oh, we could do this. Oh my gosh, that's going to be so awesome. And yep, that's going to be so awesome. And of course, that happens in smaller companies, medium companies, big companies. So you have all of these ideas of projects which are all promising. But of course, the key in business is to have focus. Less is more. So what this is letting them do is letting them play around and do this what if analysis. Like, hey, we have all of these great ideas, but why don't we play around and see, well, what if we did this set and what if we did that set? So brilliant, mate. I mean, already, if this was the MVP, oh boy, this is pretty amazing. Keep going.
Thanks, Avi. Yeah, like you were saying, like this is like a what if scenario, right? Where Oscar, the business user, and also the director of the company is able to like just playing in here with this, right? And you can see that just the budget is the one that it's being modified, and in here you can have a greater level of detail, right? So this is like the SKU and the customer, right? This is like random information. I just generated that, but you can remove also like specific SKUs, and it's going to be modifying the graph that you have in here, right? So what so why does this table is important? Because in here, this table, it's also showing the information that is in this graph, in this chart. So when you are like that, you want to take that budget, that scenario, sorry, that you just generated, you want to export it to Excel, for example, because we will see that um, uh, we will be working with Excel on this, like for this solution, Excel was also necessary, right? So you can just export the data, and you had the information like which projects were on the conservative scenario, like the definitive projects for the conservative scenario, and also what SKUs, what item, and what with what client ID, right? And you can see like the information, like if you well, this is the same as this, so this is for the
Yeah.
conservative, sorry, for the 2020 conservative scenario, right? So you can take this information to Excel. Why was that important? Okay, well, a lot of things that like the workflow of the company. Well, a lot of companies still use Excel because it's a great tool, and this is like a way to work with the best of the both worlds. And also, we were not able to do something that he was concerned about in Power BI, and that was like, okay, but for example, what happens if I want to um, modify the budget inside like one of these inside 2020, right? For example, the first half of the year, I want to have like 50% of the optimistic scenario, and then like the second half, I want to have 100%. So what happened in there? And that's something that it's difficult here in Power BI. I don't know if or someone has a way to do it. But that's why we were working with both, right? Excel and Power BI. Like we were getting like the best of both tools. In Excel, that's something really, really easy. And in here, well, it's going to be something more complicated because, I mean, there's a way to do it, but it was going to be really difficult because it needed to be at the month level, at the SKU and client ID level.
Yeah, and I'll jump in really quick, and yeah, I'll
Yeah.
say that when I started with Power BI, we worked with, I remember my first class, well, one of my first classes was a finance team, and we came in with this naive idea that we're going to replace Excel, and I think that's the most stupid idea on earth. And Excel is a great tool. So the way forward is not to, oh, everything is Power BI. No, Power BI just fits into this bigger picture of analytics and how you run your business and all of that. And Excel certainly has a very important place too. So yeah, you would be doing yourself and everybody a benefit, a favor by using Excel for its strengths and using Power BI for its strengths. So I think you guys found a good balance there. So hey, Diego, I did have a few questions for you. So just let me know whenever you're ready for that.
Okay, yeah, well, that was what I was trying to explain about the solution. And as final thoughts, well, I already said them, but I just want to pinpoint them. It's that you can leverage the best of both worlds, Power BI with Excel or Excel with Power BI, how you want to see it. And also, like this is something that I really struggled with, not in this project, not just in this project, but throughout my career. Like you can add value to a project, even though when the people that you're working with or the person that you're working with already knows how to do, like, well, in this case, Power BI, and how to do a good model. But just because you have a different perspective and you have a different career, you can add value to a project. That is the message that I want to leave you guys with right now. Something that I struggle to learn, and I want to share it with you.
Oh my God, that is awesome. So Diego, I think that answered my question because yeah, I wanted to ask about kind of the overall impression. So folks, uh, I'm gonna pause and let that sink in. So what Diego said is really really powerful, and I want you to hold on to that, right? So often when we go in, so of course what I teach my students is don't be the Power BI guy. That's the most stupid idea in the world. Um, and yeah, you want to be focused on business and business problems. And Power BI is just a tool to enable the business. And what's going to happen is that, and Diego probably doesn't even realize it because he has had so much experience. I've heard his story, and hopefully we'll have him back sometime and share his whole story because it's really compelling. It's like a Hollywood script or something. But the key is that you have that too. You have that experience. Don't discount that. Don't just be the Power BI person, and don't be in the business of solving Power BI problems. That, oh, if somebody's stuck with a DAX formula, I'm going to stop that. That I'm going to solve that. No, that's a very low bar, my friend, and that's not going to get you far. What you need to get is you need to get into partnerships, and you need to work with business to solve their business problems, and that's what Diego did, right? That's what the USP is. That's what makes you valuable. That's what makes you a Power BI pro. Diego, man, that was awesome. Thank you so much. So we're gonna
Thanks,
switch
Javi.
over to our next presenter, Thomas. So Thomas, whenever you're ready, go ahead and introduce yourself, and definitely share your screen as well. Let's try. Hold on, I'm gonna take screen sharing. Oops. All right, so all right, Thomas. Yeah, whenever you're ready, I'm gonna check in the comments really quick. Oh wait, I think you're on mute. All right, your screen is coming up. Oh, maybe you were not on mute. All right, I think we can try to say something.
Okay.
Ah, yes. All right. So audio good, video good. We can share your screen. Yep, go, my friend. So again, definitely tell us a bit about yourself before we dive into the project.
Well, um, I've been doing reporting for up to 20 years now because in various capacities. Started out reporting in an ERP program, then in an analysis data collection process for healthcare outcomes. And that was like in the early 2000s. But on a personal level, my interest in small to medium-sized businesses goes back to the late 80s when my family opened up a store in the area. And so they had a retail outlet and they were looking for information about, how their sales were progressing. And so they would send me they would fax me a sheet. I'd enter the data by hand and send back a printout of their daily or weekly sales stuff. So, from there, I went into more programming stuff, and till recently, I've retired from my previous job working in a consulting business. But when I started thinking about retiring, I thought, well, there's really a need. Power BI is like the perfect tool for small to medium-sized businesses. And so I decided I would pursue some opportunities to share that knowledge and help small businesses. So
That's great. That's great.
and I joined up with Avi's project here and took on a project that's not really a small business, but I had an interest in the topic, which is education. And my client is a higher education institution, and they're interested in exploring their student success rates. So my client that I was working with, she came into Power BI, I think a few months ago, like maybe last spring, and previous to our meeting and taking on this project together, she had been working with Power BI, creating a data model and generating some reports. And so when I looked at what she had and looked at her data model, it became apparent that it wasn't designed to the principles of better modeling. So, and that was evident in the fact that there were a lot of bidirectional relationships. So I took the data that she could provide. I didn't have direct access to the data, so I had to try and figure out what the data would be most productive, enable us to get some kind of a prototype of model that she could work and learn from, and then expand on in her further endeavors. So initially we had some difficulties because it's an education institution. There was problems with getting access to the data for permissions. In other words, permissions to allow me to use the data and then get the data to me, and then figure out a way to work with the data so that I could have a project or something to share, and then she could just take that file and work with it, which involves setting up a share folder on each of our systems, and then she would point to the share folder when she was working with the Power BI file, and then I would point to my share folder. And so this is how we were able to interact aside from face-to-face meetings over Skype or Teams. We went through a couple iterations of versions of the data, and I was eventually able to get enough data to put together this model. And it has two fact tables, a registration fact table and degrees earned fact table. And then we're describing those interactions with some demographics information. Of course, there's a calendar, and then there's the degrees that are available and that the students earn. So basically, this is the model.
Nice. Yeah, nice and clean.
And then these over here are tables. They're actually things I imported from the Excel files she sent me. And then from this data, I was able to shape it into this model.
All right.
So I'm here. I had information on age and degrees earned and when they were earned. But right now we're just focusing on, given the data set that I was given, which was like graduation information from 2014 through last spring. And so based on that data, I built these graphs that show like the different schools that have a variety of classes. For instance, the business school has degrees in accounting and finance. So through your cross filtering, you can see how the different departments and schools compare in terms of their graduation numbers. And then here you can see the age groups broken out so we can get an idea. Of course, there's more in the younger age groups and then fewer as people age out. So that's one example that I explored. Another one is I thought, okay, so what kind of demographics information could we glean from comparing or overlaying the graduation numbers with zip codes and a map layer that shows a diversity index. For instance, you might look at graduation rates with different diversity indexes, and that is a overlay available through the ArcGIS public layers available. And so here we can see that in this zip code, we had 12 degrees earned amongst 12 students. And then we can click that and get the diversity index, which is
was it showing up as a tooltip? Hey,
there it shows up like this.
All right. Oh wow.
So this is data in the from the public domain, and it's already been massaged and calculated for an index that shows what are the chances that two people chosen from this area would be of different race or ethnic groups. And this particular county has a 37% diversity index. Nationwide, the average is 64%. So you might say that a county with a high diversity index shows that it has a higher graduation rate. Didn't really fully explore this, but it was an idea that I thought might be worth investigating. And so I kind of got part way into this.
Brilliant, mate.
But would be interested in looking at that further. And then another approach that I took was she wanted to see, what's happening over time. So I developed this. Oh, I forgot to show you something here. These are the academic years, so for which I have data. So you can select, like in 2015, what were the graduation rates, for each of the academic years. And of course, every time I change the data set, we got to explore this or zoom in. But anyway, there is that filtering option there and the cross filtering between the visualizations. And then here, I wanted to look at some of the same data that we looked on the first page, but I included this line chart. So we can see here that, each year and every spring, there's always a spike in the number of degrees. And
Hey,
that's
do you
to be
mind popping
expected.
out that graph? That is pretty cool. I mean, frankly, what I'm fascinated about is folks, if you notice, so people often talk about a fiscal calendar, but equally easy in Power BI is to do kind of academic calendars. You can see that at the bottom. So that's really cool. You can see summer, autumn, winter, spring. Nice. Keep going, mate.
Back to, and so I put my filters up here, gave them a different color to make them stand out. And now you can go in and take a look at individual years, for instance, or you could take a look at let's see. I think you can like look at individual winter quarter for each year.
Yeah.
You can look at different educational institutions. For instance, you want to look at everything that's offered by the Division of Culture and Art Communications. These are the various majors that are available.
Yeah. Hey, this is awesome. So the funny thing is, when I first started off with Power BI, or its earlier incarnation, for those who remember, it was called Power View, along the Power View, and I would show them a report, and then they'd say, "Oh, Avi, this is great, but can I have it just for my group?" and they didn't get it that all you need is that to click on the slicer, and it works for your group. That's great. That's awesome, man.
And so that's what I've been able to do up to this point. And I think we, due to scheduling and like I said, unavailability of certain people needed to allow me to have access to the data. We got kind of a late start because there was the end of the summer quarter and
Yeah.
through the beginning of the fall quarter. There wasn't a lot of availability there.
Dude, you have amazing. I hope your client understands that and appreciates that, because certainly the other members in the Pro Plus team do. Because folks, so we have seen Thomas go through the journey. So Thomas, yeah, you can check the comments later. But yeah, they were pouring in, and people were other Pro Plus members, Charles and Eamon, were talking about how you've come a long way. Yeah, so this is pretty awesome. And of course, I had sent this out in the email this week and last week as well, that you're not yeah, I mean, that's how real Power BI projects go. It's not always kind of a straight and narrow line, right? So yeah, that's great. So I think Diego talked about that, and I'm sure Bruce, who's up next, is going to talk about that as well. That once you kind of do a project and do a version, and then I always talk about this peeling the onion. So now that you're at this point, what are things that you saw, or maybe your client saw that, oh yeah, well, wow, if we can do this, can we do that? Were there things like that which you kind of put up on the chalkboard, if you will, and say, huh, those would be interesting things to explore?
So I can kind of show you this because my client did ask for, like I said, looking at this over time.
All right.
And in the registration data I got, I did have a registration or a enrollment status. So I decided to use that. It's a pretty limited in its variability. So you're either enrolled or you're not, or maybe you're on a hold or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, well, maybe we could take a look at, for some people, when were they enrolled? And I could probably draw in the anchor point, look at various cohorts, like you mentioned, Avi.
Yeah.
So this is just a simple matrix built in from the built-in visualizations. And I'm thinking, there wasn't a lot available that I could find unless I started getting into fairly involved calendar types of visualizations. But that was one thing that she requested I thought we might pursue.
Terrific. Yeah, that sounds great. And certainly, yeah, cohort analysis can be really powerful. For folks, cohort analysis basically says that everybody who joined together, how did they do? How did they fare together? And of course, you would see some kind of a separation. Some people, kind of the normal graph, you expect that. Some people would kind of be really fast and quick through the course. And of course, cohort analysis applies in a lot of different scenarios to website visits and things like that. So Thomas, thanks so much for sharing that. And my friend, if you did this with a domain so you've been around healthcare, I think it's going to be pretty amazing to see what you can do working with a healthcare company. So, folks, interestingly, our next example is from the medical industry. But, folks, if you are kind of around healthcare or medicine, Thomas is your man. So make sure to reach out to him and connect with him. All right. So,
Thanks,
Thomas,
Avi.
thank you so much. Bruce, thank you so much
Hello, Avi.
For being patient. And
No
yep,
problem.
you're up. So go ahead and introduce yourself and share your screen whenever you're ready. And yeah, just dive into it.
Okay.
Okay, and hold on. Let's see if your video is on. And oops. All right. Yep. Good to go.
Okay. Are you seeing my title slide then?
Yes, healthcare
Okay.
visibility.
Good deal. All right. Yeah, my name is Bruce Stanfill, and I started quite a few years ago with my career. Actually, as an engineer, control systems engineer from the Naval Academy, and then nuclear power officer on the aircraft carrier. Very much, hey, this is the right way to do things. Obviously, this is what we should do. But I've softened in my years of experience. I got a master's in engineering management, exposure to Six Sigma, earned a Six Sigma black belt, got my MBA, and then last November I finished a PhD program in leadership studies. Main interest there was they're finally putting numbers around leadership and outcomes. So along the journey, I worked with Medco Health Solutions for 13 years in the automated pharmacy, and we used system data to double our throughput in 3 years. Not just our capacity, but our throughput. So I know the power of being able to look at data in a way that makes sense to people that may not like to look at data. And actually, the first project that I did for my black belt was before the company had a formal program, and I presented it to 500 senior leaders and showed a graph that seemed pretty obvious. The more downtime we had, the lower our productivity. That's great insight. But then I said, but if you look at the graph, you notice it's not a straight line, or there's a lot of variation there, which means that something more than downtime is affecting our productivity. And that was kind of opened some eyes, and because of that, the company created a Six Sigma program to pass on the training. Well, Beautiful. now with my doctorate, I teach at University of Texas, San Antonio, just 2 classes while I do my regular day job, which is consulting. So ERP implementation with a focus on getting the data out of the system to help operations. And then I currently also have a healthcare plan client, plan administrator, and we're working with about 9 million rows of claim information to present it in ways that can help them achieve better health outcomes. So this project, I picked up the list. There are a couple of things there that appealed to me, but it's go on to the next slide here, the client. They're an early stage company that provides innovative healthcare plans. They were founded 4 years ago, and now they already have 14,000 patients, 11 participating providers. You think that's a great story, but sometimes we grow to the point that we kill ourselves. So if they're growing rapidly and where they can just, hey, fix this problem, go do this, it doesn't work anymore. So they found that their manual processes, which they started with, just are not sustainable. And my client who signed up for the project is their CFO, and he's new to the company. And he also a black belt, but he saw the potential to use Power BI to solve some of these manual processes. The particular problem that we're addressing were that the counts, in order to bill the member employers and to pay the providers, it was all done manually counting. Most people understand the healthcare plans are usually priced on the basis of, are you insuring just an employee? Are you insuring the employee plus another adult spouse? Or just the employee, single parent, and their children? Or the family, which includes the employee, spouse, and children? Well, their eligibility files were separately maintained, and they would group them by family and then count how many were in each one. It was very, very tedious. and they have several files. And if they want to pay a given provider, they'd have to look at each of those files separately to determine how many people to pay a provider for. So that manual process, it actually took them about 3 days every month to manually count the tiers. And then they had to generate the invoices and payments. And as a CFO, he knew, hey, we've got to be missing something here. We might be missing billing somebody. We might be missing paying a provider for the work they've done, and they might not be happy with us. So we should get this accurate. So the first rule that he gave me, and I'm going to talk through not the final result, but here's the process we went through, the iterations, a little bit of the story. So he wanted to generate a dashboard that he could look up this eligibility file and have it figure out what the tiers should be and provide the counts by employer and provider. Seemed pretty straightforward, except they had to generalize the rule because in their eligibility files, they didn't have a spouse indicated as a spouse. So this was the logic that was provided to me. And then I wrote a DAX formula here, a very straightforward nested if statement, where I count the lives, and if there are 2 people now to figure out, well, is this a spouse or a child? And we use the adult. Another thing with healthcare, though, is that adults are 26 years old and up, meaning that you can't be supported by your family plan. You have to get your own plan now. Well, some people were married before they're 26, myself included. So we knew there was just an approximation, but he wanted to see if that would work. So round 1, we discovered some messy data. And these doesn't have great graphics, but the point at this point wasn't great graphics. It was to understand the data. I thought I could use this member type field that they had, but I was told, no, that's not reliable. Don't use that. Okay, so I had to calculate based on the age whether someone's an adult or employee. Oh, by the way, you've got all these people in here that don't follow the general rules. They're not for employers we actually care about. We only care about this set of employers that we're going to bill, not the individual plans. Oh, okay. Well, we can filter them out, find a way to identify that this individual is not on a employee group, so, by, oh yeah, here's that about the tier logic not correct. Some children also can be dependents if they are fit certain categories of disability, et cetera.
So let me get this right. So you have the stream of data, names, information, age, and you're trying to figure out, oh man, who's the employee, who's the spouse, who are the kids?
Correct.
All right.
So yes, it seems kind of awkward, but they did have this member owner, and a member owner ID. So I could come up with rules that if the patient ID was the member owner ID, well, that was the employee. Then I could find everyone else in the family that had the same member owner ID. But there were some other complexities because sometimes you would have one family that would have 2 different member owner IDs. Well, those were the individual plans, not the employer plans, so it didn't matter.
Yeah. The funny thing is sometimes you look at some other business or something else and it's like, oh man, that's so bizarre. But then I'm flashing back to the stuff that I've dealt with, and man, I think everybody has a case of bizarre or more that they have dealt in their lives, and I think that's sometimes the reality of real businesses, right? It was just messy, and
Exactly.
Good thing we have tools now to kind of help us support us in that journey. That's great. Keep going.
Right, because people, the employees here, they're trying to do the best they can. And they know that every month they're going to read through this list. So as long as they can read and understand what it means, that's good enough. But for system, you need to have it consistent. It always has to be the same code or field kind of thing. Different project I'd done with a distribution company. They wanted to categorize their products, but their practice was to write this name in whatever free form because a person could read the name and figure out what it meant. The system can't do that, not without spending a lot of money. Anyway, so didn't know how we're going to fix that right off the bat, but we went on with other stuff. So round 2, well, when I get the list of employers or looked at the list of employers, they didn't always match up. Like I said, they're human readable. Sometimes there would be a code here for the source of the contract, I guess, dash employer. Sometimes it was that with a space dash space employer. Sometimes it was employer abbreviated.
Nice.
So that pointed out to them when I could ask the question, so how do I know who the real employer is? Oh yeah, we're inconsistent there. We need to go back and make that work. So it was a discovery for them that they need to be more consistent in their manual entry. But I also needed a lookup table of the employers to match to. So when they gave me that, it also included the payment rates. And the client said, well, actually, what we want to get to is how much to bill these people. So can you, once you get the counts, can you multiply it by the rates, by the tier, and tell us amounts? Sure, yeah, we can do that. Well, rounds 3, 4, 5, added scope. We're starting to customize the display a little bit. We branded it for them. Just to point out, we came across this repeating number pattern. So thanks to Avi's training, I know what that is. So yeah. Can you go out? And it's just some of the technical Power BI stuff that an inexperienced user might say, oh, this doesn't work. It's never going to work. But I know, okay, it's just because my categories here, tiers here on a provider table where I'm trying to count on an individual table and they weren't connected. So anyway, moving on, said, well, now that we've got some estimates on these costs, can I get a sample invoice so I can check against it? And I said, sure. Oh, by the way, I just gave you one data file. We do have 12 different ones. Can we do this process for each of those 12 files? Well, and I said, well, how about we do all of them at once? So we did go and establish the data source as a folder. And he had created a shared drive for me to get the data files from. So I built the model. Up to this point, I was just showing him the model. Mm-hmm. But at this point, I sent him the model and showed him, okay, here's the source that I've got as a folder. You need to just change it on your computer to be wherever that folder is pertaining to you.
Nice.
So from this point forward, I could work on the file with the data I had. I'd email him the updates, and he would just reconnect it to the correct source. And now he could use it. And at this point, he started exploring to see where things didn't make sense. We did fix the tier logic. We found a way that if we categorize the individuals first, find the owners, and then find the age difference for each individual as compared to their owner, the person that's closest in age is probably the spouse. Might be younger or older. And we did have to say, well, what about an adult that has a child that's 21, that's closest in age, because step or whatever. But we said, okay, the age difference has to be less than 15 years difference. So when we did this, we did find some exceptions. There's my DAX code for that. The problem here with DAX was we had to iterate over this whole table, and we didn't want to look at everything. So we had to use this earlier statement to limit the source just to this member owner ID. That took us a couple hours and some Googling to get to. But we were able to get to that point. So we then, after getting the age difference, now I could say in a very simple logic, well, if it's one person's employee, if it's two, if there's anyone that's a spouse, it's a spouse plan, otherwise a family. And if it's over two people and there's at least one spouse, then it's a family plan, otherwise child. So this logic got simpler because we had better information. Round 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, we added a data validation screen because that became the real focus here. It wasn't just counting them, it was cleaning up their data that had been manually maintained. They found some that the providers weren't defined for the patients, so they couldn't be assigned to the right provider.
Yeah.
So the employer neighbor, plan types, fields that I was using to match the payments weren't consistent. We also ended up having to expand the spouse age difference up to 17 years, but it still didn't catch the one that said it was a employee child plan when the employee is 67 and the spouse was 39. So I know my wife had joked when I turned 40 if she changed me for 220s. No, this person did. So anyway, so we changed the counts. Also, we discovered that they were including people who had aged out. So we had to check only include active individuals. And later we found that one plan wasn't showing up because they hadn't paid on time. They were still covered though. So we had to add this other status. So these were things, as things came up, we could just change the logic slightly to account for them. So round 10, here's our data verification screen that it could filter by active or ended, filter by tiers. It would list the individuals. We also had filters up here on a table format, that employer, what was the health insurance payer name, so they could find inconsistencies there. We started to go through also with the counts and verify them. So if they find something where the manual counts don't match, they, for instance, a child is one too high and the family or spouse is one too low, they can look to see the data. Oh, that explains it. And here's that issue where we found the couple. Oh yeah, it was 67 and 36.
Nice.
So our final dashboard that we delivered was in this format, that we could filter it by employer, give us the counts, the employers were up here. So actually he can just export this, and here's their whole billing list that they needed. And if they want to pay their providers, here was this part. So it basically replaced 3 days of monthly manual effort with a load the new data files into the directory they're supposed to be, refresh, done. There was a but. The CEO or CFO and I, we had gone through this. There were employees they brought in every now and then, but the employees still trusted their manual effort more than a system-generated solution. So the real effort here was, okay, well, give me a group where you find something different and we'll investigate it. So I walked them through investigating that. And it turns out that in one case where he was using Excel and selecting all the rows, well, he didn't drag down far enough. So he said that my counts were over by 4. And in fact, he hadn't dragged down to the last 4 people. So that was kind of an aha moment for them. It had to actually a couple new revelations. When I asked, well, how could this be? And because he was counting off a particular field, oh, that's something we manually add from the field the partner system provides us. Partner system files? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're standard healthcare stuff. Yeah. So they were given these pre-source files. The PowerBI matched those counts, and the errors were traced that they had incorrectly coded the source, which we thought was the ultimate source of truth. But so they were there was another manual process prior to this that had never been mentioned before.
Yeah.
And also those source files, they're industry standard. They identified the spouse. For all these years, they've been ignoring that piece of information that was there all the time. So the CEO actually came in when they made this revelation on their own. They said, we're so sorry to tie you up for, all these different iterations, but we know who the spouses are. But we were at the end of the project at that point, but future efforts could go, let's use those source files instead of the ones they're manually created. So kind of wrap up with lessons learned. At the first meeting, my client and I, we ended up identifying many possible or personal commonalities, things we had common. We're both doctors, not useful ones. I'm a PhD, he's a dentist. I joke about that because nobody likes to go to the dentist. We're both Six Sigma black belts, and he's native from Mexico, and actually my wife's from Mexico, so yo también como Diego, yo hablo español, pero como santo de güero.
Nice.
Yeah.
I got half of it.
Yeah, there we go. So the other thing is that this might open up a larger effort. What I've seen in my history of data and analytics is that it's not just, hey, give me the answer, here's this data, find the perfect solution. It's how did that data come to be? And you can streamline your processes, take out a lot of manual sources of errors. If we could do some process mapping of as is, non-threatening, tell me how you do it now. Never want to correct someone when you're asking how to do it, because then they might shut down and not tell you. It's embarrassing, whatever. Then we can go through let's walk through this. Where are some sources of waste, et cetera? The end result would improve their efficiency, reduce their costs, improves the data quality, and it would support their growth. And then finally, a postscript on around 10, the client himself went ahead and created this table of the counts. But if we'd started here, it never would have been bought in. Now their team trusts the accounts and they can use this because we went through the process of here's how we get it. So the main emphasis of the project was actually to gain the trust of the employees that the data could be made correct. The more other generalizable lesson learned, and this is my last slide, if I remember correctly. I'm going to try to move this out of the way. Octavio is my client partner. He knew how to use Power BI. He knows the value that it could create, but he was new to the company, so people didn't trust him. So having an external resource deliver this solution, now he could be supporting the company by criticizing my work, not in a bad way, but hey, this doesn't match. Why could that be? Rather than saying, hey, this system works perfectly, and then having the resistance of people that have been there much longer than him. So having the external person do it, it resulted in buy-in that would have been difficult for him to gain alone. The other thing was using this iterative approach, expose these additional opportunities at a pace where the client didn't see them. If we'd start off at the beginning, oh, you got to fix this, it would have seemed insurmountable. But as we went through this iterative approach, they could resolve some issues as we went along, and it didn't seem insurmountable. So while it was initially perceived to be too complicated by the employees, as we identified the issues one by one, they could take ownership of that, be embarrassed by it, which they shouldn't be because it's normal to have, messy data. Yeah. And rather than blaming it, they could fix it. So that's the journey on this project, and see if there's any questions y'all have.
Oh my God. Bruce, dude, that was insane. Oh, folks, that was quite a journey. Bruce, you kind of shared your credentials earlier, PhD, teach a class, leadership, and all of that. And certainly it kind of shows. And I always talk about kind of the soft stuff, and people fixate so much on Power BI and DAX and the earlier function. And that was there, right? But that's just right. Kind of one step. And there's this bigger picture. And we're seeing these things come together certainly in a Pro Plus community, and I'm glad to see that. And of course, partly I'm glad because it gives me the opportunity to kind of learn as well. So I've heard from you about the whole Six Sigma approach, and it goes way beyond just Six Sigma. Of course, you have like the kind of the communication skills and kind of personal management, negotiation, all of that kind of woven into this, and that's what I think makes a great professional. Let's call it. Frankly, I'm not a huge fan of the word consultant, right? So, so yeah, all of these things are needed. So that was really powerful. I'm just going to go through some notes that I wrote down, and folks, if you have any questions, then certainly start that. But man, our Pro Plus students are certainly commenting over here on YouTube. Folks, if you liked what Bruce showed, and Diego and Thomas, let us know. Show them some love, show them some support. Tell us know kind of what you liked. But the notes I wrote down was, I don't know where to start. Sometimes when you walk into organizations and you look at something and you go, man, why do you do it this way? And you get the answer, because we have always done it that way.
Yes.
And all that always, I'm like, okay. That's always a bit of a red flag for me. And of course, you took them on a journey, and it, and that's good. That you were kind of patient with there. So that was good. But we saw from your example that so much gets kind of lost in that mindset of that, because we always do it this way. People had literally forgotten that they had this system file which had all of this data. But I'll share another thing. Hold on, there's some folks. Hold on one second. There's some feedback on the mouth. Okay, I read this quote from like a mindset coach the other day, which kind of fits, I think, and it said, "What is in the way is the way," and I was like, "Whoa, that's deep." But I got to see it. Right, so, and again, it's kind of a mindset thing, and you can kind of be frustrated. Oh man, right? You could have totally come to this with a different attitude, saying, "Hey, you guys wasted my time," right? But no, you see differently, because it is that, right? What is in the way is the way. It was your journey to go on this process and work with this data and iterate, and like, oh yeah, let's change the logic. because that's what kind of had you win the trust, and now they trust you, now they listen to you, right? So, and of course a magical thing happens. So I'll share my journey really quickly, where when I started doing sales reports, I went through the same thing. They would question the data. I was like, oh, it doesn't match our reports. And of course, we would go back and forth. And yeah, sometimes I would fix my stuff, but more often than not, there were things they were missing. Like you talked about, like, oh, they didn't drag down far enough. And a magical switch happened. So earlier, when they would, their numbers wouldn't match, like, oh, your report is bad, it doesn't work, data doesn't match. But one magical day, Shanna Carmody, the sales lead of North America, sends me an email or something, or maybe a message, and she says, "Hey, Avi, hey, I think I might be doing something wrong because the number it doesn't seem to be what I'm expecting." Now the embarrassing thing was that at that moment there was a mistake in the model. But the magical switch was that instead of, I knew that I had won their trust, because their first instinct was not, oh, this is bullshit, this is all wrong. The first thing was, shit, I'm doing something wrong. So it's like, oh, sorry, Shanna, this time it was me. But I think that's really important. And of course, Charles picked up on that too, the whole peeling the onion, where you kind of go deeper. And as you talked about that, now that you are on the step, your client, Oscar himself, and of course, I'm sure together, you guys can see kind of a lot of roads kind of leading out, like, oh my, we can do this, we can do that. So that was pretty powerful. By the way, so if you haven't connected with Mark Frater, he's the other Six Sigma black belt I know. That would be a pretty cool connection.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see if there are. So certainly a lot of good comments here. People were asking me about replay. Folks, yep, this is going to be on the replay on the channel, and we'll send out an email about that as well. All right, that's terrific. And I'm going to check in on YouTube. Yeah, so Dharmesh had a comment along the lines of what you were talking about. Getting buy-in is important when working in an organization. Don't discount that. So he's asking, did you find that your knowledge of the Six Sigma method helped? So I kind of saw, I heard you mention it a few times, and I saw it kind of woven in. But yeah, how do you think that plays into the work that you do now, specifically around kind of Power BI consulting?
Well, the Lean and Six Sigma, they're two separate approaches, but they're toolboxes, and you don't need to use every tool in the box for every job. What I would hope to get to is, well, let's open the door and do process mapping, which is a Six Sigma tool. But in this particular project, it was just a logic thing of, well, if these criteria are met, then it would be called this type of plan. So it really wasn't too tough. It was the biggest issue with the project was gaining trust. It wasn't the technical side of it. But people buy software all the time because the sales guys say, oh, this will solve all your problems. You need to invest in Tableau. You need to invest in whatever.
Domo.
But then you got to train people. And if you haven't fixed the data, and if you haven't fixed the process underneath that, you're going to be blowing, $100,000 a year rather than $10 a month per employee.
Yeah.
So I think this Power BI is excellent to demonstrate and to get that journey where you can now start, without investing a lot of money, get to see the data and then explore the process issues underneath, resolve those, and you can get your answer.
All right, so cool. So hey, by the way, I realized we went quite a bit over time. You do have a few minutes. I had at least one more question that I wanted to ask you. All right, great. So I remember talking to a pretty senior finance professional within Microsoft, and the insight that they shared with me was that, and they said, Avi, if you look at the landscape of what's happening with finance, sure, there are a lot of companies out there who are still kind of doing the old way and cranking out reports, but that has started to change. And it is not going to stop. It's going to be a juggernaut, and things are inevitably going to head in that direction, where things are going to get more and more automated and so forth. And of course, we're also starting to see kind of AI and all that things coming in. So he said, finance professionals, they can't just kind of sit on their laurels. They can't just be, kind of what got you here won't get you there. So right now they're like, oh yeah, I do this report and then I do this presentation, all that stuff. Well, if the world has changed, if the report has automated and then everybody's kind of doing self-service BI and, AI systems are automatically kind of pointing out the things that they need to look at, then what does your role become? So if you were just kind of cranking out reports and kind of heads down, kind of finance person, right, doing the numbers or something, you're not really needed, right? I mean, you're going to go extinct. What you need to do is to become a real partner. And the funny thing is that I think that was the original intent of these professionals anyway. Even when they're hired, those are the kind of things that are discussed in interviews, like, like how are you going to support the business, right? So when they come in and they say, hey, look, this deal isn't really good. We should walk away from this, or we're not investing this in, or something. We need to optimize this in HR, right? So and I've seen some of that from really good finance professionals. They work as partners, not as just do the reports. But I feel that there's going to be a parallel in the Power BI world. So I think right now Power BI is like a really hot skill, but we all see where it's going. I mean, Microsoft keeps introducing kind of AI elements and keeps making it easier and easier. Earlier, I had to build like an Azure machine learning model, which, I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. But now they're just kind of bringing it in the tool. So I feel like even Power BI professionals, I think it's a great idea to start right now. Why wait for that to happen and then try to change, right? So, I kind of saw that where you work as a partnership. So, do you see that? Do you see like a Power BI professional who's not just a Power BI professional, but how do you see them helping businesses in a bigger way, not just writing DAX measures?
Well, my opinion, the DAX measures is a language.
Yeah.
So I try to hire bilingual people, it doesn't matter what language, because they've already learned that you can say things in different ways, or you might need to say things in different ways to get your message across. But I think the real Power BI professional shouldn't be just making the pretty displays. It's being able to help the client understand what goes into that. What are the assumptions you're including? With AI and that, it kind of concerns me because people are seeing it as some kind of magic. But you have to train the AI. And if you don't understand and trust something someone's putting a report for you, how are you going to trust something machine comes up with, again, when your data's messy?
Yeah.
So I think that the Power BI professional needs to be asking the questions of, well, where does this come from? How do you know this value means that? How do people use this field? How's the data get there? Who enters it? Where does it go to? Understanding of their process will eliminate 80% of the problem. The Power BI then could just be a tool to demonstrate your progress as opposed to trying to find your problems.
Terrific. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bruce and Thomas and Diego. Hey, those were all great presentations today. And of course, I feel so lucky that I have the opportunity to kind of learn with it as well. So folks, if you go to learnpowerbi.com and click on the training page and scroll all the way down, then there's a it talks about our Pro Plus program, which is again, we have such amazing members in this group, and we'll be opening this again in January 2020. You can join the waitlist to look forward to that, and of course, as part of that, future we'll run a real Power BI projects again. And if you go on my site, free resources, Real Power BI, you can find out more about the project. Of course, it's kind of wrapping up, so we're not going to be running it, but we'll of course be running it in the future as well. So, folks, again, thank you so much, and everybody on YouTube, we will see you guys next time. Until then, power on.